sorry, one second. We think about this idea as this incredible commandment, right? I mean, you wouldn't do this by choice. Take your son, your beloved son that was born when you were 90 years old, and sacrifice him. That's a command. But I want to, okay, sorry, a little technical issue. I want to go back to the text and have us look a little more closely in the English. Well, actually, before I do that, I'm guessing, is it safe to assume that it is not a surprise for anybody that this is a command?
It is a surprise. It is. I mean,
That it's a command?
yeah.
What would it be?
Well, God promised Abraham early on, his descendants would be like sand on the earth and stars in the sky, and they'd be the blessing of many nations. And God gave Abraham Isaac at the age of 90, and his wife was 80. You know, that's a surprise. And that Judaism values life above death and values children above all. That's why we have such prominent educational systems. So it seems like it contradicts everything that God was standing for before and his promises, you know.
Right. It does seem like it would contradict it. And therefore, but I think that's all the more reason for it to be, oh, it's weird that it's a command at all. Why would God be calling
Yeah.
it? It means isn't, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. On the other hand, you could say, first of all, if it's optional, it's probably not going to happen, right? This is ridiculous to ask somebody to choose this. In fact, last week's Torah portion, Lech Lecha, was phrased as a command. Lech, go. I mean, even if you don't, if just the sound of it, even if you don't speak Hebrew, is the sound of a command. Go, just do it, right? So here, I want to look a little more carefully.
But does it say a commandment at all? It said just God puts Abraham to the test.
It does, and then look again, look here. I'll highlight it, but it's the purple here. The English is take him, right? Take your son. The Hebrew has these two little words. Kach means take, and then it has this little word at the end, na. Na in Hebrew, in certain iterations of Hebrew, is a way of saying please. It's a request. If you look carefully, you can frame this as that God's not commanding him, which you would assume that if this is going to happen at all, to your point, Susan, this needs to be a command. This is not an optional thing. However, the language is please. It's proper etiquette. Please take your son. God didn't say, please go on this journey, even though the reward, as you just pointed out, Susan, it was, you're going to be a great nation. You know, you'll have all of this offspring. You will be a blessing. This is just go sacrifice your son, please. So just keep that in mind. Again, the question is where's the binding? What's happening here? Maybe this is just Abraham. I hadn't thought about this until this moment. Abraham in a bind. Or what's he going to do? Okay. So what happens? Early the next morning, Abraham saddled his ass, and I want to stop and point out the fact that the English here and the Hebrew, it's not an exact translation, but they intone the same thing. It's this fact that he got up, he didn't delay. He got up pre-dawn, got packed up the minivan and headed out, right? So there's an eagerness to this, right? There's an eagerness to it. Early the next morning, Abraham saddled his ass and took with him two of his servants and Isaac. He split the wood for the burnt offering, and he set out for the place of which God had told him. They journeyed for 3 days, because on the third day, Abraham looked up and saw the place from afar. So I want to stop for a moment again. I cannot read this twice a year without thinking about how heavy the space between them must have been for those 3 long days. What was the conversation? And if there was no conversation, what was the silence? What was Abraham thinking? What was Isaac thinking? It's just so heavy, but they went together. Penina, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, he told him, et bincha, et yechidcha. Take the one that's the only one. And he wasn't the only one. There was Ishmael already in the picture. Ishmael was born first. So if he didn't tell him to take his first son that was born, he said the one that you love, the one that you paid attention to, the one that you are chosen. So the one that he was chosen was not from Hagar. The one that he loved was from Sarah. Okay? So he took the one that he really loved, which was Sarah, and he was thinking to himself, Yechidcha, the only one, is not the only one. So if he takes him, there was another.
That's right. And you're that's a really astute, that's a good close read. And many translations say your only son. Or,
So he
let's
thought
say,
to
or son,
himself,
I'm sorry.
and let me finish
That's
this
the translation. Many translations say your favorite son. They don't say your only one, they say your
No,
favorite one.
they
But that's
said the one who's going to be
translations.
remained alive. And he saw that the only way that it's going to be the one who actually believes like him. Because if it would be the other one, he wouldn't be alive. Now, nobody's on earth may not be alive because he believes in other gods. The mothers are the one who took care of it. Because we know with Rachel that Rachel took her idols with her, or whatever, Rebecca, one of them, and sat on them, and then took it with her because there was still a question. Which one is the real God? What's going on here? They were in transition. They were in a moment that Abraham was not the only one already. Excuse me. Now he's responsible for the people that come after. He has to make a decision that will decide, is it going to be a world of life or a world of death? And that's exactly what he chose. He chose to take the one that he thought that if he goes, then it's going to be the bad thing. But he still had to do it because he thought that that's what God told him. But in the end, God saw that he is in a, how would I say it, in a chaos. And
He's in a bind.
And he called them out and he said, don't do it. Or he himself decided to take the sheep and do it, and do the sheep instead of the son, because that the one that he loved represented life, the how would I say, the whole human existence, whether it's going to be from the son of Sarah or the son of Hagar.
That's another whole conversation that I thought about bringing today and chose to go this route. But that's a huge,
he knew that Sarah was with him because she came and she was helping the people that came by, and she is the one who cooked for the passengers, and she let him have this belief, and she was with him the whole time. So he knew that the continuation will be there for the human race to continue in the right way, not to the idols and not throwing the children into the fire. That's it. That's my interpretation. I have to read Nechama Leibovitz and see what she says about it. I'll let you know the next
Everybody has a lot to say about it because there's a lot to say about it. Okay, yeah, let us know. Victoria, go ahead.
I just had a quick question. Thinking about what you said about that, just the heaviness between father and son as they were walking for 3 days or traveling. And I realized that although I'm familiar with this story, I don't really have any idea how old Isaac is.
I'm so glad you asked that question.
I know.
37 years old.
37.
37.
30, yes, he was a full-blown adult, and we often read from on a very, when people first look at this story without putting it all together, assume he's a young child. but he is a full-grown adult, which raises another whole series of things, of questions. Penina, hold on one second. Rebecca had her hand up. Go ahead, Rebecca.
I looked back to chapter 21, verse 11 and 12. And when Hagar had to leave, Abraham was displeased. But God said to Abraham, don't worry, listen to Sarah, because Isaac is the one from where all your numerous descendants are going to come from. So that clarifies your only son, take your son, your only son. Because
Well,
God has already said Isaac was going to be the one from which all the descendants would come from.
On one hand, it clarifies it. On the other hand, it just is, if we were going to have that conversation, I would have put those verses in, because it's literally an opening for a humongous, really important conversation, right? I mean, yeah. So anyway, but yes, thank you for that, because it answers where that comes from. It doesn't necessarily make it feel just. So I want to go back to the question I asked. I want to just back to the original question. Brad, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to mention that respond to your point that we don't know what these people are thinking. We don't know what Isaac is thinking. We don't know what Abraham is thinking. And this Eric Auerbach wrote about this in his book, Mimesis. I've talked about this a number of times. But this is the Bible is not philosophical or not psychological.
Right.
The novel is not a psychological work. We don't know what these people are thinking. A psychological work in writing doesn't happen until like the 17th century. That's when we first see the birth of the psychological novel. So this is creating a whole trend in literature that lasts for centuries. So it's real, and Auerbach compares it to the Iliad, where we know exactly what those people are thinking. But here we have to fill in the blanks. Exactly. It's upon us as the reader to make sense of this.
Exactly. And to inherit the generations of oral Torah that were added to this.
So I would say the people being bound are we, the readers.
Great. Say more, because that was the question I was starting to pose. I go to the original question. Where's the binding happening so far in this story? And we're only a few verses in. Brad,
well, I'm being bound. I'm being bound to interpret this, to make sense of it. I'm being it's not being laid out to me on a table. I'm being bound as the reader.
Yeah. From a literary perspective, you're being bound to the text itself.
Yes.
Oh, love that. Love that. Any other ideas about what you think is where binding is happening here?
I don't know about the binding.
Well, can you, I want to get answers to my question. So hold on, Penina. Susan, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say Rebecca had something.
Rebecca, was your answer to that question?
But I will answer after Rebecca.
Oh, well, I was just going to add to what Brad said, and it's something that I wrote that Rabbi Davis, may his memory be for a blessing, said. We're supposed to be considering moral and ethical consequences and ideas and feelings versus, psychological or historical accuracies.
Beautiful. Thank you. Great. So that's what we're trying to tap into here. Great. Susan.
No, I like that too, that you just said, Rebecca. It is a moral text, less than a Freudian psychology, although you could put that in everywhere. But binding to, when you speak of binding to your parents, binding to a religion, you're also bound to do something. Bind has a lot of different connotations in English. And so was it a sacrifice, or was it binding to binding to God and binding Isaac to the Jewish, which would become the Jewish religion?
Beautiful. Yes, 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 and yes. But none of that really fully at this point in the narrative yet, right? So far, on a very surface level, there's some binding going on between Abraham and God. We know that there's some sort of a bond. I mean, again, we're playing with this in English, between father and son. And maybe that's it for now. But let's keep reading and see, because there's so much more. And some of those key words that I had highlighted, I think will help to answer that. Panina, I see your hand. Go ahead.
I was going to do it really fast. I had a teacher, excuse me. I had a teacher, he was brilliant. And he thought that the whole business of the age, that they counted the days as one unit and the nights as another. So if we're looking at the 95, the man was really only 45. So just an idea that I'm throwing out there so you can.
Yeah, I think the timing is that's a fun one to think about. Then Noah was only 300 when the flood came.
Exactly. So that even
no, but yeah, I mean, we don't know. I mean, I think to Rebecca's point about trying to read for historical accuracy, those types of things are less instructive, interesting, but less instructive than really, to your point, Rebecca, and Rabbi David's of blessed memory. You know, what are we taking from this? And there's so much here. So let's keep reading. Okay. So they're, imagine a long road trip. They finally look up and in the distance see the place. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and put it on his son Isaac. He himself took the firestone and the knife, and the two walked off together. Okay, so they're taking, they have to leave the car behind, and it's time to take the essentials and walk to the next place. That word together is another one that keeps popping up here. And the Midrash asks, what does it mean? So, I mean, the vision in the mind is Abraham. I skipped a verse. I'm sorry. I skipped verse 5. Abraham said to his servants, you stay here with the ass. The boy and I will go up there. Okay, you stay behind. It's time for us to go. We will worship and we'll return to you. Then it was time to pack up. Then they took the stuff out of the car, right? Left the ass behind with the servants. And Abraham's carrying the wood and takes the wood and puts it on Isaac, another piece of evidence that he's probably not a young child because he's carrying big, heavy wood. And he himself took the firestone and the knife, and the two walked off together. Now, of course, there's something missing here. And if we go with the assumption, which is pretty standardly accepted, that he's an adult, Isaac is an adult, Isaac's seen this before, played out. He knows what's missing. What's missing? The animal, right? But they're not there yet because there's so much silence between the few words that are here. But they went together, yachdav. And the Midrash, and Rashi quotes the Midrash, defines together that it just like Hineni is not just a physical thing, Yachdav is not just a physical thing. The Midrash says it's with this, that it means with the same ready heart. Okay, so I want to pause for another moment. Now we've added a layer to the binding. What else is being bound up in this story at this point? Or who else?
It is the binding that together is father and son, which they're bound together, and then it will progress to all these other bindings, I guess, which I had mentioned before.
So it's literally, I'm going to play with the word to your point, Susan. It's male bonding happening here, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, yes. Yeah.
What's troubling though too is Sarah's not in this either.
Right. So there's the bind is growing perhaps, or there's something happening with the the bond between father and son. But we also see here that Isaac is entering into this. And we think about even when we reference the story, we talk about the binding of Isaac as if Isaac is a subject, right? And we talk about this as if it is 100%. Most of the time we talk about it as the story of, it's an Abraham story. But if you look a little closer here, Isaac is really entering this because he was an adult. He could have turned around and run away. He could have said, hey, Dad, why am I understand I'm carrying this wood, but I also understand that the animal for sacrifice is missing here. Something's wrong. But Isaac is, I offer that Isaac is entering into this idea of what's being bound here. Victoria.
Just on that same note, in verse 5, you have Abraham, the translation in English, at least, is that he says to the servants, we will worship, meaning that Isaac and I, we are doing this together. We are both entering into this worship, and we will return, which I think is really interesting. And again, familiar with the story, but did not know that at the, outset, Abraham sort of made that promise or that declaration or, however you want to describe that.
A fantastic close read. And the Hebrew it's an accurate translation. It's the first person plural in the Hebrew. So we will worship, we will return. So is Abraham trying to, knowing that Isaac is listening and trying to kind of think he's pulling one over on Isaac, or does he actually believe we will return? And we don't know. We don't know. Susan, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say that points to the fact that the latter for what you had just said, that Abraham would believe, and I guess that would be Abraham's test of the test of God. Will Abraham believe that God will stop him? What you had mentioned when he said we will return. I find this interesting that most representations in art are understandably by Christians, because Jews aren't supposed to represent this in art until modern times, but it's such a prefiguration of Jesus' sacrifice with God the Father and going willingly and with the wood. I know we didn't want to particularly get into it, but I can see where they being former Jews themselves latched onto this.
Yeah.
Carrying the wood and I'm here, Father, take me and crucify. So anyway, back to your story. I think it's Abraham now looking at it.
Okay, great. That Abraham his belief was so profound. Is that what you're saying? His belief was so profound that God was going to step up when need be. That, and yet you hold that against that. There, going back to the very beginning, when God called him, he got up early to go. It was almost like this instinctual. He just went. And so did he know then? Did his instincts lead him and his mind followed, or his belief followed? We don't know. We don't know. Penina, go ahead.
The mothers weren't there. How
Right.
come? None of the women were there.
Well, that's what we were saying, right?
Can you imagine? Can you imagine if the mothers were there? And
they wouldn't allow it.
Well,
exactly.
Well, I mean, that's right. I mean, we know that there's.
Because Sarah died from grief just hearing about it.
Excuse me, can I just finish one sentence without you guys interrupting? I mean,
Please, come on.
This.
Go ahead, Penina.
The kids are going to be not doing the same decisions if the mothers would have been there, or one way or another. It doesn't matter what would they have decided, but the mothers weren't there. It says he took his donkeys, he took his male people, Ne'arav, and the mothers there would have made the difference about the decisions of the children, because Isaac said, I'm ready. The other one didn't. he says he was there. The other one didn't say no. Okay, Isaac said, "Here I am," but he had everybody there except the women, except the mothers. Why didn't Ishmael said, "I'm here"?
Well, maybe
Okay,
he wasn't called to
because
come.
Isaac said, "I'm here," because that's what he believed, like the father. The other one didn't believe so. That's it. Because of the mother. Again, the woman is the one who instills it in the house from the day that the babies are born. They take them to shul when they can walk and they can talk, or they can at least hear, not talk, because if they'll talk during the services, you don't want that, right? But this is a very big thing where the mother is there. You don't make the same decisions because you know that it's going to kill her if he's doing something bad to himself. So that's, I think, something to just pay attention to. And with this, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Thank you for it's very true. And we know there's so much midrash about Sarah here, in particular, not you'll come to next week, maybe, when she dies, not to give too much away, but right. And we know that the most common interpretation is that she dies from the grief of this all.
But
Yes,
she
maybe
didn't
she
die.
would have.
She left him and she went to live in another tent. She was so mad at him that she left him and she went to live. She was a princess and she had her own tent and she went there and then he joined her there. The son joined her there. She left him. She did not die in that moment. Okay.
Yeah, right. Okay. All right. Let's keep reading because some of these words come back. And again, the question is, where is the binding, the bonding, binding, bounding happening here? Okay. So, okay. They went with the same ready hearts because Isaac, to Penina just said, Isaac said he hasn't yet, but here he does. Then Isaac said to his, only then, after they went together. So after this 3-day journey, after this just heavy, heavy silence, we assume, and after Isaac presumably realizes that there's something really important missing for this, for a sacrifice, then he says to his father Abraham, Avi, my father, and he answered, oh, excuse me, this is Abraham responding to Isaac. Hineni bani, here I am, my son. Right? So here, Abraham is saying Hineni to Isaac, because we would assume that the question is maybe doesn't even need to be said, but he says it. Here are the firestone and the wood, but where's the sheep for the burnt offering? Right? This is the question. And what's the response? Now we come to the other word that's in red. And Abraham said, "It is God who will see to the sheep for this burnt offering, my son." And the two of them walked off yachdav, together. So they went off together after Abraham answers Isaac's question. And I want to go back to this powerful understanding of the word hineni from the beginning of our discussion, right? This means when you say hineni, Victoria said it. It implies a certain commitment, or I'm binding myself to you in some way, some sort of a greater commitment. And Abraham says to Isaac, here I am, hineni, I am here in commitment to you, Isaac. He's already said it to God. And I'm in commitment to you. God will take care of the animal. And then they walked together. And remember, Rashi and the Midrash interpretation is with the same ready heart. They were both ready to be part of this. So the bonding keeps going. They arrived at the place of which God had told him. Abraham built an altar there. He laid out the wood. He bound his son Isaac. He laid him on the altar on top of the wood. And this is where the word Yaakod, the binding, is. So that's why the translation, I think, Susan, you brought it up before, when it's often translated as the sacrifice of Isaac, for people who use Akedat Yitzhak, which is the Hebrew that we translate as the binding of Isaac, it literally is he bound himself, right? At this point, he definitely has not sacrificed him. unless you make, a midrashic interpretation that he already has, which case could be made. He built an altar, laid out the wood, bound his son Isaac. He laid him on the altar on top of the wood, and Abraham picked up the knife to slay his son. The messenger of God called to him from heaven and said, Avraham, Avraham. Note that it's said twice. It takes, right? Imagine you're so focused on something, on a task. You sometimes don't hear it the first time. Avraham, Avraham. And he says, Hineni, I am here. So I want to stop there just briefly so we can get to the end. Where's the binding happening here? What's going on? What is being bound at this stage?
I think it doesn't matter.
Okay, Rebecca.
I think it's Abraham because everything seems to be happening in twos. You need two things to bind something, right? Together.
What do you mean? Oh, two people, two entities in a relationship. Is that
To
what you mean?
bind, to be bound. So the fact that Abraham's name was said twice, then Abraham was bound to himself.
Ooh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Never heard that. I love that. Thank you.
Good one.
Yeah, that's great. Brad.
Can you say that God's being bound here at this point?
My answer, you phrased it as a question, so I'll say yes, 100%, and tell me why. Anybody can answer, but if you're unmuted,
Well,
Brad, why?
God's being bound to honor the test. Abraham is passed, and God is being compelled then to honor it.
Beautiful. Thank you. And what's a covenant? It's a two-way relationship, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's just an affirmation of the covenant here. Great. Thank you. Victoria, and then Merle.
This might be a stretch, but I want to go back briefly to the moment where Abraham says, "Here I am, my son," and he's speaking obviously to Isaac. And I wonder if there's a way in which he's on some level, or maybe is trying to convince himself or convey this idea of, I am showing up for you, I am in service of you, maybe in a larger way. Like what's about to happen may not look like that, but in this greater scope of us and our people and our purpose and our relationship to God, this is not just something we're doing for God. It is something that I am doing for us and our people, and that includes you.
Right.
That's not a stretch at all. That's beautiful. It is, if you read it in that lens, and of course it's so complicated, but I think that is a very, very astute way of reading it. He's being a good parent. I mean, again, lots of people attack him for, how could you do this to your child? But I'm saying it specifically, he's modeling faith and he's modeling the covenant, living in the covenant. Again, with lots of questions around that. But in that regard, absolutely 100%. So again, and they went on together, and maybe Isaac knew it and therefore willingly went with him. Again, I always come to this and think Isaac's not as passive as we think he is.
And this is the last, Abraham knows that he has very little time left to say anything to Isaac. And so knowing that there's about to be a reveal, or on some level, subconsciously, maybe Isaac knows what's coming. It's like, how do you convey that, or your love as a parent, or that that I am trying to model something or teach you something here, or be bigger than the moment without saying it explicitly.
Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Merle, go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
I think, especially after hearing what Victoria just said, I'm thinking the more I read this, I'm thinking a lot of this is a mental binding. That this is, it's a story. We don't know who was there or if anyone was there. It's a relationship between them and God. And I think most of it is mental. that's probably the wrong word, but
Yeah, same. What do you mean mental? Like
a
emotional?
thought process.
That's it. That's
That
a good one.
a thought process that's creating the binding.
Is it imaginative, Merle?
Pardon me, I didn't hear what you said.
Do you think it's imaginative when you say mental?
I don't think it's imaginative, but I think maybe there were thought processes, and that's how they're trying to convey it in as a story.
You know, I actually love that because one of the accusations that people make against Abraham when looking at this story, people look at this and say, oh no, that was blind faith, and we Jews do not do blind faith. And you're making the case, Merle, that actually, no, it's just the opposite. That, you know, and I think there's something between somewhere in here, there's a fine line between instinct and intention, which is mental.
It's all there in your head as a process,
Hmm.
whether it really happened or not, but the things that you're thinking about the binding and about your relationship with each other and with God, that's all some sort of head thing.
You know,
I'm guessing.
no, I think I love this. I love this. And there's something in this also when we look at how time is laid out in this narrative, right? You have that he got up early and it, you know, Vayashkem, the Hebrew implies it too. He got up and he went, and it's almost like, boom, let's do this. And it's fast. And then there's this long process of letting it sink in while they take this long journey. And then there's the next step of the journey when it's just the two of them. And so maybe, you know, the instincts settled it. Maybe he was led by instincts, but he actually checked it mentally. It's possible when he had time for his cognition to catch up. Susan.
No, I have a question. First of all, the early, some say he didn't want Sarah to know.
That's possible.
But yeah, so practically, because that's a practicality. But then I don't quite understand, you're saying that he's modeling behavior to Isaac. Is modeling behavior in terms of obeying what he hears from God, but modeling behavior and killing your.
This is why it's so problematic. I'm not defending it. I'm just saying that you could make that case, right?
Right. What kind of model is that?
Right. Not a model that, and it's not a model the Jewish people have followed.
No, it's some of other people. The Jewish Journal just has one out saying that's a model for Hamas for sacrificing their children, you know, with the suicide bombers for death. So that's not a model.
Right. So again, we dig below the surface and there's so many ways to read this, but I think that one of them, and again, I am not defending taking the child, the beloved child, right? But there's something about his commitment to the covenant that he is modeling. I'm not saying it is a model. I'm saying he is modeling to Isaac, who will be the next one. I mean, we know how it ends, right? Who will be the next one to carry the covenant to the next generation, what it is to be in this covenantal relationship. So Victoria, and then Brad, and then Panina.
I really was struck by what you said about time and the way that time happens in this narrative. And it made me go back to that moment of Isaac getting up early and what that means. And I think all of the different interpretations that we've already mentioned, and I think, not wanting Sarah to know, or, this commitment, or almost an eagerness or an intuition. But the thing that I thought about was what a sleepless night that might have been for him. And if you are tossing and turning as a parent, as a human who has this thing set before you, you're not getting any sleep. And so at a certain point, it's like, well, we might as well just get up and get this over with and do this thing. And so I don't know, that's another that might actually have been a very long night that stretched forever, and that there was a moment for for him where it was like, I can't lie here in the dark anymore if this is going to happen, or whatever's going to happen, like, let's find out.
No, that's beautiful. So powerful. And the truth is, the word is like literally got up. It doesn't say he, it wasn't weak. It was, he stood up, he got up. And so that's very possible. Like enough of this waiting already. Interesting.
Well,
Brad.
Can I say something?
I had called on Brad first, and then we'll come to you.
Okay.
It's said that all literature is in dialogue with other literature. And famously, previously, Agamemnon sacrificed his daughter Iphigenia to enable the Trojan fleet to leave because the winds had quieted. And I just wonder if this story is playing with a theme that was already out there in literature and just giving us a different take on it. Because the history of the Jewish people could go on very well without the story. You could excise the story, couldn't you, from the Torah and just move forward?
You mean to have the Torah exist without it?
Yeah, the Torah could exist without the story, and because our story is basically what we're moving to is the liberation of people from slavery. So, this doesn't exactly add to that arc,
But it
I'm
does
just saying,
add,
I'm not saying it's irrelevant, but I'm saying it could just be a literary rework of a theme that somebody just wanted to give a different spin on.
interesting. And yet, because in one way.
Because that's what literature does.
Right. Beautiful.
Agamemnon was written later.
Well, the story was around, way before. So
That's there's so much here, which is why we have to read it at least twice a year because we can't get to it all in once. Panina and then Ben.
Okay. I think the whole idea is that he got his boys, Ne'arav, both of them, and they all left together. And we know later the story that Jacob thought that, not Jacob, Isaac, that Isaac thought that Ishmael is going to kill him when he wanted to meet him later on when they were already married and they had already children. And instead of killing and fighting each other, Ishmael hugged him and they cried on his shoulder. And they each decided to go their own way. And the choice was there. Nobody wanted, Isaac was afraid, but Ishmael was actually friendly with him, and they loved each other, and they cried on each other's shoulder. So it shows us that the story, they say, there is a sentence that we always have to remember, En mukdam umeuchar baTorah. There is no early and lately in the Torah. The stories doesn't have the right timeline that we think should be there. They take the pieces that are important, but when they show up, maybe it depends on what they find later on in archaeology. Maybe they found another strip of a scroll, like they found the Megillah at the Yam HaMelach in the Dead Sea. They found a scroll of the Maccabees, the strategy of how to defend themselves against the Romans. I think it was at the time with the Maccabees, right? When they struck their flesh with iron thing. I think it was Rome. So you cannot take one story and put it in your timeline. You have to try to fit of the end result of what was happening, to fit it together, to see what the result was of the whole story. They still loved each other. Isaac was afraid, but Ishmael hugged him and they cried on each other's shoulder. So the message was there. The message was life. The message was love. But it's just that later on, what us humans today and all the generations before us. It's how you interpret the story and how you want it to be and how people pay you to believe that should be like that. And the intervention is nonstop from all kind of directions.
Interpretation. Yeah.
Exactly. The idea is look at the end result. They loved each other. They continued.
Well, Panina,
That's it. We're done.
right. Okay. Ben, go ahead. I'm watching the clock. I just want to show one thing before we conclude, but go ahead, Ben. I
Well,
want to hear what
first
you
off,
have to say.
I'm excuse me, sorry I was a little bit late to join, but what a great discussion. And to me, imagining if God spoke to me, whether it was a burning bush or go build an ark or free these people, that'd be a pretty powerful message that I would be getting. And you ask this question, what were they thinking on these 3 days walking? And I think we cannot think of that in terms of sort of mortals and how one might think about this thing as a mere mortal, but think of it in terms of God just spoke to me to do something, and I'm uplifted. I've become super spiritual. I'm almost in a trance to do this mission. So it might have been quite enjoyable or enlightening, or again, spiritual. That can be a good feeling as well. So, and I'm just thinking their mental state would be unique. And almost as Panina was just saying, we can't really use our thinking to interpret it. We have to think at another level.
Absolutely. Thank you. And a helpful reminder. I mean, we look at it from a modern lens and are horrified. Oh my gosh, how could this happen? But you're right. There are lots of different ways to experience it. So I just want to, we are over time, but for those who can stay, I just want to look at the very last verse of this section. So we know what happens. And then it says, Abraham returned to his Na'arav, to his servants, the youth that are waiting for him.
Not necessarily servants. It could be all the males that were there with him.
It
means his boys.
Okay. Whoever's there with him.
Right. Males.
And they departed Yachdav. It's the same. Together for Beersheba. Abraham stayed in Beersheba. Now, who's missing at this point at the end of the story? He returned to those who had stayed at base camp, if you want to think about it that way. We don't hear from Isaac again in this story. Now, Abraham continued Yachdav with these youth, these boys who were there. We don't hear from Isaac, but we know how it ended because Isaac shows up later. What we don't know is about their binding together as father and son at this point, because who goes on together? Abraham and I'll say the servants, but we know it's not necessarily. Okay, so and then I just want to point out one other thing, and it says Abraham, they went to Beersheba, and then Abraham stayed there. So we've talked about different ways of using time in this story, but I also want to throw in that this story there's so much, but there's also something about space and journeying and moving forward and moving on. Here, we don't know where Isaac went.
We do know
that, well, it doesn't say it in these verses, right? We know from context. But Abraham stayed. He went there and then he stayed. So I think there's something in terms of the binding, and I know there's so much more, but for the sake of time, we're just going to wrap it up. In terms of the binding that's here, I think that I go back to this idea that Isaac is not a passive participant here, that he's not here at the end. But I think that there's somewhere deep in this, if we, could dive deep into this, that Abraham, there's a bit of a passing of the torch going on here. It hasn't happened yet, but Abraham went, and you can disagree, but there's one interpretation is that Abraham then went and then he stayed, at least in this verse. The Torah doesn't say that by accident. We don't know where Isaac is, but he is getting ready to pick up the mantle of the covenant. So in terms of there was binding between father and son, binding between Abraham and God, and maybe there's some binding going on behind the scenes here or after the event between God and Isaac as well, which we, in some ways, as complicated as it is, and I say it without judgment, right? There's good and bad to this crazy story, which is why we have to come back to it so often, that binding continues on. And as was said earlier, maybe, and we are brought into it along the way because it's ours. It's ours. Okay, we are way over time. Susan, go ahead. Last word.
Does he bind with his mother, Isaac? Because when he takes his wife, it's in the tent of his mother in High Sarah. So is that how he lives on through Sarah?
Tune in next week. Tune in next week.
Oh,
Okay.
I can't wait.
Can't wait either.
Bye. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
shalom.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you.
Shabbat shalom,
Shabbat shalom.
everybody. Shabbat shalom. We'll see you at shul. Bye-bye. Hopefully.
Hopefully.
I'll be online.
If we can still walk
I'll be online again.
or drive. Okay. Bye, you guys. Have Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Nice to see your face.
Yeah, and they didn't do the okay, whatever.
Okay. Don't tell them.
I know.
Don't make them feel bad.
Right. Okay.
Don't make them feel bad.
That's okay. I won't. Okay.
You can do it yourself.
I will do it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Sweetie.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Shabbat shalom. Bye bye.
Shabbat shalom.
Be well.